Admiral Vexthor couldn't believe what he was seeing on the glowing display in front of him. His four eyes blinked rapidly as he watched the strange ship move across the screen. For 3 hours now, this unknown vessel had been racing through space at impossible speeds. Nothing should be able to move that fast. The laws of physics simply didn't allow it, but there it was, breaking every rule the Empire had ever learned about space travel. The ship was heading straight for Nexus Prime, the most important and heavily protected star system in the entire galaxy. This wasn't just any random target. Nexus Prime housed the Empire's central command, their most advanced military bases, and billions of citizens who had never known fear because the Empire's might protected them. The Admiral's clawed fingers danced across the control panel, pulling up every piece of information their sensors could gather. The ship's design was completely alien to him. In his 200 years of military service, he had seen vessels from every corner of the galaxy. The Empire's archives contained detailed records of every spacefaring race, every ship design, every technological signature that had ever been encountered. They prided themselves on knowing everything about everyone, yet this ship matched absolutely nothing in their vast database. Its hull seemed to shimmer with an energy that their sensors couldn't properly identify. The propulsion system gave off readings that made no sense. According to their instruments, the ship should have torn itself apart at those speeds. The gravitational forces alone should have crushed anyone inside into paste. But somehow it kept moving forward with perfect stability. Admiral Vexthor felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years commanding the Third Fleet, he had never encountered anything that the Empire's knowledge couldn't explain. They were the masters of this galaxy. They had conquered, catalogued, and controlled every significant civilization for thousands of years. Nothing surprised them anymore, until now. The bridge crew around him worked frantically at their stations, trying to gather more data. Their best scientists were already analyzing the readings, but their confused expressions told the Admiral everything he needed to know. Nobody had any answers. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Zexrim from the communications station, "the ship is maintaining its current heading. At its present speed, it will reach Nexus Prime in less than 6 hours. 6 hours. The Admiral's mind raced through possibilities. Was this some kind of weapon? A scout ship from an unknown enemy? Perhaps refugees from a distant galaxy fleeing some catastrophe? But if they were refugees, why approach the Empire's most sensitive system at such aggressive speeds? The holographic display updated with new information. The ship's energy signature was unlike anything in their records. It pulsed with a steady rhythm that seemed almost organic, as if the vessel itself was alive. The readings suggested power levels that rivaled their largest battleships, yet the ship appeared to be only a fraction of the size. Admiral Vexthor straightened his uniform and made his decision. Whatever this unknown vessel represented, it would not reach Nexus Prime unopposed. The Empire had not maintained galactic dominance for millennia by allowing mysterious ships to approach their capital uncontested. "Scramble Squadron 7, he commanded, his voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at his thoughts. "Whatever this thing is, it ends now." Captain Mordex watched his squadron of 12 Imperial warships take positions around the strange vessel. Each ship was a masterpiece of military engineering, bristling with weapons that could level entire cities. Their formation was perfect, designed to intimidate and overwhelm any potential threat. This was how the Empire had handled unknown contacts for centuries, and it had never failed. The captain straightened in his command chair and activated the first contact protocols that had been refined over thousands of years. These procedures had worked on every species the Empire had ever encountered. They started simple and universal, something any intelligent life form should understand. Mathematical sequences began broadcasting from his ship's communication array. Basic numbers, prime sequences, geometric patterns. These were the building blocks of logic that any spacefaring civilization would recognize. After that came linguistic primers, simple concepts paired with visual representations that would help establish a common language. Minutes passed in tense silence. The mysterious ship just floated there, seemingly unbothered by the 12 warships surrounding it. Captain Mordex frowned as his communications officer shook his head repeatedly. Nothing. No response at all. Perhaps they don't understand our transmission methods, suggested his science officer, Lieutenant Veklar. Their technology might operate on completely different principles. The captain nodded and ordered his crew to try different frequencies, different signal types. Even basic light patterns flashed from their external displays. Still nothing. It was as if the ship was deliberately ignoring them. Then, just as Captain Mordex was preparing to try more aggressive communication methods, something changed. The static on their main communication channel cleared, and a voice came through with crystal clarity. "This is Captain Jiho of the Terran vessel Steadfast. You're blocking our shipping route." The bridge fell completely silent. Every crew member stopped what they were doing and stared at the communication console in disbelief. The voice had spoken in perfect galactic standard, the official language of the Empire. Not just understandable, but flawless, with proper grammar and pronunciation that would make Imperial language instructors proud. But that wasn't what shocked them the most. It was the tone. The voice was casual, almost bored, like someone asking a neighbor to move their vehicle from a driveway. There was no fear, no respect, no acknowledgement of the 12 heavily armed warships that surrounded them. It was as if Captain Jiho was discussing the weather. Captain Mordex felt his heart skip a beat. In his 40 years of military service, he had never heard anyone address the Imperial Navy with such casual indifference. Pirates begged for mercy. Enemy commanders issued defiant challenges. Civilians trembled with terror. But this tone suggested the human didn't even consider the Imperial ships a threat worth worrying about. "Terran," whispered Lieutenant Veklar, frantically searching through their databases. "I've never heard of that species designation. It's not in any of our records." The science officer's claws clicked rapidly across his control panel, accessing archives that contained information about every known intelligent species in the galaxy. The Empire had been cataloging alien races for millennia. Their database was considered complete and infallible, but there was no entry for Terran, no record of their technology, their culture, their home world, or their capabilities. It was as if this species had appeared from nowhere. Captain Mordex cleared his throat and activated his own communication system. When he spoke, his voice carried the full authority of the Galactic Empire, a tone that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. "Unknown vessel, you are in violation of Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately and prepare to be boarded for inspection." The response came back almost instantly, and the casual tone hadn't changed at all. "Oh, hey there, thanks for the heads up about the territorial boundaries. We're just passing through on our way to the local trade hub. Mind pointing us in the right direction?" Captain Mordex ordered his ships to move into a tighter formation around the human vessel. This was standard Imperial procedure when dealing with potentially hostile unknowns. The 12 warships began closing in, their sensors working overtime, to gather every piece of data possible about this strange craft. What they discovered made no sense at all. Lieutenant Veklar stared at his sensor readings with growing confusion. "Captain, I'm getting impossible data from the hull analysis. The computer keeps giving me error messages." "What kind of errors?" Captain Mordex demanded, moving to look over his science officer's shoulder. "The hull appears to be made of materials that don't exist, at least not according to any known science. The atomic structure is showing properties that violate basic physics. It's somehow both incredibly light and impossibly strong at the same time. And the way it interacts with our scanning beams..." Veklar paused, checking his readings again. "It's like the hull is absorbing and redirecting energy in ways that shouldn't be possible." The tactical officer, Commander Zarthex, was having his own problems. "Sir, the energy readings from their power systems are off the charts. According to these numbers, that single ship is generating more power than our entire squadron combined. More power than some of our space stations." Captain Mordex felt a cold dread settling in his stomach. "That's impossible. Look at the size of that vessel. It's barely larger than one of our fighters. There's no way it could house the kind of power generation equipment needed for those readings." "I've triple-checked everything, sir. The readings are consistent across all our ships. Whatever they're using for power, it's technology we've never seen before." Meanwhile, Captain Jiho's voice continued to drift over the communication channel, completely oblivious to the panic he was causing among the Imperial crew. I hate to be a bother, but we're running a bit behind schedule. Our cargo manifest shows we need to make 3 more stops before heading back home. Could you folks point us toward your main commercial district? We've got some really nice coffee, beans and entertainment packages that always go over well with new trading partners. Captain Mordex couldn't believe what he was hearing. This unknown captain was referring to Nexus Prime, the most heavily fortified system in the galaxy and the seat of imperial power, as if it were just another shopping mall. The casual tone suggested the human had no idea he was talking to representatives of the most powerful military force in known space. "Listen carefully," Captain Mordex said, putting every ounce of imperial authority into his voice. "You are trespassing in restricted imperial space. Your vessel will immediately power down its engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your ship. This is your final warning." The silence that followed lasted just long enough for the Imperial crew to hope they had finally made their point. Then Captain Jiho's voice returned, and he sounded genuinely puzzled. "I'm sorry, I think there might be some kind of misunderstanding here. We filed all the proper paperwork with the local shipping authority before entering this sector. Are you saying there's been some kind of administrative mix-up? Because if there's a permit we missed or a fee we haven't paid, we're happy to sort that out right now." Lieutenant Vekelar looked up from his console with wide eyes. "Captain, he's talking about filing paperwork with local authorities, but there are no local authorities in this region except us, and we certainly didn't receive any shipping requests from unknown aliens." The situation was becoming more bizarre by the minute. The human captain seemed to genuinely believe he was dealing with some kind of bureaucratic confusion rather than a military confrontation. He spoke as if interstellar travel and trade were routine activities, like delivering packages between neighboring cities. "Furthermore," Captain Jiho continued, "I'm not sure what you mean by powering down engines. We're not actually using our engines right now. We're just coasting on momentum while we figure out where we need to go next." Commander Zarthex checked his tactical displays again and felt his blood run cold. "Sir, he's telling the truth. The ship shows no active propulsion signatures, but according to our calculations, it would need massive thrust to maintain its current position against local gravitational forces." Captain Mordex realized they weren't just dealing with unknown technology. They were facing something that operated by completely different rules than everything the Empire understood about space travel. Captain Jiho sat in his command chair aboard the Steadfast, drumming his fingers on the armrest. He had been trying to get simple directions from these aliens for nearly 20 minutes now, but they seemed more interested in making threats than providing basic customer service. Back home, even the grumpiest space traffic controllers would at least point you toward the nearest trade station. "Minjay," he called to his navigator, "how long until our next scheduled delivery?" "About 3 hours, Captain," the young woman replied, checking her tablet. "The folks on Kepler Station are expecting their coffee shipment right on time. You know how cranky miners get when their caffeine runs late." Jiho nodded and turned back to the communication console. These Imperial ships had been sitting there in formation, blocking the main shipping lane for far too long. If Earth's newest commercial route was going to succeed, they needed to establish that human cargo vessels wouldn't be delayed by every local military patrol they encountered. "All right, Hyunsu," he said to his pilot, "I think we need to show these folks why blocking a major shipping route isn't the best idea." The pilot grinned from his station. "Want me to give them the standard demonstration, Captain?" "Keep it gentle," Jiho replied. "They seem new to interstellar commerce protocols. No point in scaring them too badly. What happened next would be talked about in Imperial military circles for generations to come." The Steadfast had been floating motionless in space, surrounded by 12 of the Empire's finest warships. Then, without any warning whatsoever, it simply vanished. On the bridge of Captain Mordex's flagship, every alarm started blaring at once. Sensors went haywire, displaying readings that couldn't possibly be correct. The unknown vessel had accelerated from complete stillness to nearly the speed of light in the blink of an eye. "Where did it go?" shouted Captain Mordex, spinning around to stare at his tactical displays. I don't know, sir," stammered Commander Zarthex. "It's moving so fast our computers can't track it properly. Wait, there it is. No, now it's over there, sir, it's everywhere at once." The Steadfast was executing a perfect figure-8 pattern around the entire Imperial formation. It moved with impossible grace and precision, weaving between the warships like a dancer, moving through a carefully choreographed routine. But this dance was happening at speeds that defied every law of physics the Empire understood. Lieutenant, Vekla watched his instruments with growing horror. Captain, the gravitational distortions from its movement are off the charts. The space around us is warping and bending like elastic. How is that ship not tearing itself apart? The gravitational waves generated by the Steadfast's high-speed maneuvers washed over the Imperial fleet like invisible tsunamis. Ship systems flickered and sparked as the waves passed through them. Navigation computers crashed and rebooted. Communication arrays went dead for several seconds. Even the artificial gravity on some ships fluctuated, causing crew members to float briefly before gravity returned. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the demonstration ended. The Steadfast reappeared in its original position, floating calmly, as if nothing had happened. The entire maneuver had taken less than 10 seconds. Captain Mordek stood frozen on his bridge, staring at the human vessel that had just made his entire squadron look like children playing with toy boats. His crew was equally stunned, checking and rechecking their instruments to make sure they hadn't all shared the same hallucination. The communication channel crackled back to life, and Captain Jiho's voice returned, sounding slightly embarrassed. "Sorry about that, folks. Didn't mean to show off like that. It's just that we've got a schedule to keep, and sitting in traffic isn't really an option for us. Now, could someone please point us toward your main commerce district? We've got some really excellent Korean barbecue sauce that I think your people might enjoy, and our entertainment division is excited to share some great K-pop albums with new audiences." The casual tone was the same as before, as if Captain Jiho had just performed a simple parking maneuver, rather than a display of technology that made the Empire's most advanced ships look like antiques. Commander Zarthex finally found his voice. "Sir, our targeting computers never even registered the ship's movement. If they had hostile intentions..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge understood the implications. The human vessel could have destroyed their entire squadron without them being able to fire a single shot in response. The emergency transmission from Captain Mordex reached Imperial High Command faster than anything had traveled through their communication networks in decades. Within minutes of receiving the report, alarm bells were ringing in every major military installation across the galaxy. General Kexvar, the Empire's highest-ranking military officer, burst into the central command room, still wearing his ceremonial robes from a state dinner. His four eyes scanned the massive holographic displays that showed the galaxy-wide communication network lighting up like a festival celebration. Red warning indicators flashed on screens throughout the chamber. "What in the name of the ancient gods is happening?" he demanded. His aide, a young officer named Lieutenant Texrim, handed him a datapad with trembling claws. "Sir, we've received a priority alpha report from the Third Fleet. A single unknown vessel has demonstrated technological capabilities that render our entire military doctrine obsolete." General Kexvar read the report 3 times before he could accept what he was seeing. According to the sensor logs, a ship from an unknown species calling themselves humans had moved at impossible speeds, defied gravitational forces, and treated a full Imperial squadron like a minor inconvenience. "Get me Emperor Calthron immediately," he ordered, "and activate the galaxy-wide emergency protocols." Within the hour, every military base, research station, and government facility in the Empire received the same shocking message. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Empire faced a potential threat that they couldn't understand, predict, or counter. Emperor Caltheron himself materialized in the command center via holographic projection from his private chambers. Even through the flickering blue light of the transmission, his ancient features showed deep concern. In his 2,000 years of rule, he had never seen his military leaders look so shaken. "Show me everything," the Emperor commanded in his deep, resonant voice. The sensor recordings played on the main display, showing the Steadfast's impossible maneuver around the Imperial formation. Emperor Calthron watched in complete silence as the human vessel accelerated to near light speed, performed maneuvers that should have torn it apart, and returned to its starting position as if nothing had happened. How many ships did they lose? Performing this maneuver? The Emperor asked quietly. None, Your Majesty, General Kexvar replied. According to all our readings, the vessel suffered no damage whatsoever. It appears their technology allows them to ignore the physical forces that would destroy our ships. The Emperor's expression grew darker. And their intentions? That's perhaps the most disturbing part, sire. They claim to be merchants looking for trade opportunities. The captain asked for directions to our commerce district and offered to sell us coffee and entertainment products. Across the galaxy, teams of archaeologists received urgent orders that pulled them away from their normal research. Ancient ruins that hadn't been disturbed in millennia suddenly found themselves swarming with imperial scholars, desperate to find any historical reference to humans or their homeworld, Terra. Dr. Velandra, the Empire's chief archaeologist, led the search through their most secret archives. These were documents and artifacts so old that most citizens didn't even know they existed. Stone tablets from civilizations that had fallen before the Empire rose to power, star charts drawn by explorers who had vanished into the unknown regions of space, and legends passed down through dozens of extinct species. Find me anything, she ordered her teams. A single word, a symbol, even a myth or legend. If these humans have been in our galaxy before, there has to be some record of them somewhere. Meanwhile, the Empire's most brilliant military scientists worked around the clock trying to understand what they had witnessed. Computer simulations crashed when they tried to recreate the human ship's movements. Physics equations broke down when they input the recorded energy readings. Everything they thought they knew about space travel, energy generation, and materials science seemed inadequate. Dr. Morketh, the Empire's leading expert on exotic physics, stared at his calculations with growing frustration. "It's impossible," he muttered to his research team. "According to every law of physics we understand, that ship should have been torn apart by its own acceleration. The gravitational forces alone should have crushed everything inside into subatomic particles." His assistant, a young scientist named Dr. Zenala, looked up from her own work with worried eyes. What if our understanding of physics is incomplete? What if there are principles of science that we simply haven't discovered yet? The thought sent chills through the entire research facility. The Empire had built its dominance on the belief that they represented the pinnacle of scientific and technological achievement. The idea that another species might be operating with knowledge they couldn't even comprehend was terrifying. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy as word of the encounter spread through military channels. Fleet commanders requested emergency upgrades to their weapon systems. Planetary governors demanded additional defenses. Trade guilds wanted to know if their shipping routes were still safe. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire crisis was the humans' apparent indifference to the chaos they had caused. Captain Jiho was still sending polite requests for navigation assistance, completely unaware that his simple demonstration had triggered the largest military alert in Imperial history. 3 days after Captain Jiho's demonstration had sent shockwaves through the Empire, sensor operator Kextal was having what he thought would be a routine shift at the Nexus Prime monitoring station. He was sipping his morning stimulant drink and reviewing the overnight reports when his console suddenly erupted in a symphony of warning beeps. "What in the seven hells?" he muttered, nearly spilling his drink as he leaned forward to check his readings. The long-range sensors were picking up something that made his blood run cold. Energy signatures. Hundreds of them. All identical to the mysterious human vessel that had terrified the Imperial fleet just days earlier. "Supervisor Kextim," he called out, his voice cracking slightly. "You need to see this immediately." Supervisor Kextim rushed over, expecting to find a minor technical malfunction. Instead, he found himself staring at a sensor display that showed what appeared to be an entire fleet of human ships approaching their position. Each vessel displayed the same impossible energy readings that had baffled Imperial scientists for the past 3 days. "How many?" the supervisor asked quietly, though he dreaded the answer. "I count at least 400 distinct signatures, sir, and they're all moving in perfect formation." Kextal's claws clicked nervously on his control panel. "Sir, they're not just randomly scattered. This is an organized fleet operation." Within minutes, the report reached Emperor Calthron's private chambers. The ancient ruler was reviewing morning intelligence reports when his personal aide burst through the doors without bothering to announce himself. A breach of protocol. That would normally result in immediate punishment. "Your Majesty," the aide gasped, "the humans are coming. Not just one ship, hundreds of them." The Emperor's expression remained calm, but those who knew him well could see the subtle signs of deep concern. His fingers drummed once against his throne's armrest, a nervous habit he'd developed over centuries of dealing with galactic crises. "Show me," he commanded. The holographic display materialized in front of his throne, showing the approaching human fleet as a collection of bright dots moving through space. Each dot represented technology that had already proven capable of making the Empire's finest warships look like children's toys. What was Captain Jiho doing all this time? The Emperor asked his military advisors. General Kexvar stepped forward with a datapad. According to our communications intercepts, he spent the past 3 days conducting what he calls market research. He's been asking various merchant vessels about local trade goods, popular entertainment formats, and dietary preferences of different species. He's been shopping? The Emperor's voice carried a note of disbelief. In a manner of speaking, yes. He also filed several formal complaints with our traffic control department about the lack of proper shipping lane markers in this sector. Apparently, he considers our space routes poorly organized. The Emperor studied the tactical display more carefully. The approaching fleet wasn't arranged in any kind of military formation he recognized. Instead of the tight, aggressive patterns used by warships preparing for battle, the human vessels were spread out in what looked almost like a casual travel group. They're not attacking, he realized aloud. They're touring. Dr. Velandra, who had been monitoring communications from the human fleet, stepped forward with her own troubling report. Your Majesty, we've intercepted several transmissions between the ships. They're discussing things like setting up trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, and finding good local restaurants. Restaurants? General Kexvar sputtered. They're approaching the most heavily defended system in the galaxy, and they're thinking about food? There's more, Dr. Velandra continued. One of their ships has been broadcasting what they call a tourism advisory about our sector. They're rating our space routes for convenience, discussing the scenic value of various star systems, and providing travel tips for other human vessels that might follow. The Emperor felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Complete bewilderment. His empire had faced invasions, rebellions, and natural disasters, but they had never encountered anything like this. The humans weren't conquering or threatening. They were treating the galaxy's most powerful civilization like a new vacation destination. Sir, Communications Officer Luxandra interrupted from her station. We're receiving a transmission from the lead ship in the human fleet. Put it through, the Emperor ordered. A cheerful voice filled the command center. Hello there, this is Captain Suman of the Earth Merchant Marine Vessel Prosperity. We're part of humanity's first major trade expedition to this region of the galaxy. Captain Jiho tells us you folks have been incredibly helpful with navigation assistance. We're looking forward to establishing some great business relationships and maybe sharing some of our culture with you. We've brought samples of Korean barbecue, bubble tea, and the complete filmography of Studio Ghibli. Oh, and we have some K-pop groups who are really excited about performing for new audiences. The Emperor looked around at his advisors, all of whom seemed as stunned as he felt. The humans had just casually announced their intention to introduce alien music and entertainment to the galaxy, as if cultural exchange was as simple as setting up a roadside stand. They think we're customers, he whispered to himself, the full reality of the situation finally sinking in. The human trade fleet arrived at Nexus Prime like a group of enthusiastic tourists visiting a new city for the first time. Their ships spread out across the designated arrival zone, completely ignoring the carefully marked military boundaries that had been established over centuries of imperial protocol. Captain Minho, commanding the lead vessel Prosperity, opened communications with what could only be described as cheerful enthusiasm. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for accommodating our little trade expedition. We know showing up with 400 ships probably created some paperwork headaches for your traffic control folks. Admiral Thexivor, who had been hastily assigned to handle this unprecedented situation, felt his 3 hearts skip a beat. In his entire career, no one had ever thanked him for accommodating anything. Species that encountered the Imperial Navy usually responded with either terror or defiance, not gratitude for administrative convenience. "Unknown vessels," he began, using the traditional Imperial greeting that had intimidated countless civilizations. "You are in the presence of the Galactic Empire's finest military representatives. State your business and prepare for inspection." "Captain." Minho's response came back immediately, and his tone was so friendly it made the Admiral's head spin. "Oh, wonderful. We'd love to meet with your trade officials. We've brought samples of some really exciting Earth products that we think your people will enjoy. Do you folks drink coffee? Because we've got some premium Korean beans that will absolutely change your life." The Admiral looked around his bridge crew, all of whom appeared as confused as he felt. This was not how first contact situations typically went. "We also have entertainment packages," Captain Minho continued cheerfully. "K-dramas are really popular back home, and our cultural exchange department thinks they'd be perfect for introducing your people to human storytelling. Plus, we've got some amazing K-pop groups who are dying to perform for new audiences." Lieutenant Commander Vexula, the Admiral's cultural liaison officer, frantically searched through her databases. "Sir, I have no idea what any of those things are. Coffee, K-dramas, K-pop. None of these terms appear in our xenological references." The situation became even more surreal when the Imperial delegation arrived for the formal first contact ceremony. High Chancellor Morthak, draped in his most intimidating ceremonial robes, approached the human landing craft with the slow, measured steps designed to inspire awe and fear in lesser species. The shuttle door opened, and Captain Minho stepped out wearing what appeared to be a casual business suit and a bright smile. He walked directly up to the High Chancellor and extended his hand in a gesture that the Imperial translator couldn't immediately identify. "Hi there, Captain Minho, Earth Merchant Marine. Thanks so much for setting up this meeting. I hope we're not causing too much trouble with our impromptu visit." High Chancellor Morthak, who had spent 3 centuries perfecting his intimidating presence, found himself completely at a loss. The traditional Imperial greeting involved complex ritual postures and formal declarations of authority, but this human was treating him like a helpful store manager. "I am High Chancellor Morthak of the Imperial Administrative Council," he announced, in his most imposing voice, hoping to restore some sense of proper protocol. "You will address me with the respect due to my station." Captain Minho's expression immediately shifted to one of genuine concern. "Oh my goodness, are you feeling all right? You sound really formal and stiff. Is that normal for your species? Or are you maybe coming down with something? We've got some excellent human medical technology if you need help." The High Chancellor's aide, Sub-Commander Kextal, whispered urgently in his ear. "Sir, the human appears to be offering medical assistance. I think he's genuinely worried about your health." This was followed by an even more confusing offer from Captain Minho. "Look, if you're feeling under the weather, we've got some great herbal teas that might help. And if you're just having a stressful day, our entertainment division brought some really relaxing K-drama series that are perfect for unwinding." High Chancellor Morthak realized that his traditional intimidation tactics weren't just failing, they were causing the human to worry about his well-being. Never in his long career had anyone responded to Imperial authority with genuine concern for his personal comfort. Captain Sumin, commanding another vessel in the fleet, joined the conversation via communicator. "Minho, are the local officials okay? They seem really tense. Should we break out the bubble tea? I find that usually helps people relax during stressful negotiations." "Good idea," Captain Minho replied, "and maybe we should set up a cultural presentation. Nothing too overwhelming, just some basic Korean barbecue and a few episodes of Crash Landing on You to help everyone get comfortable with each other." Admiral Thexvor, listening to this exchange, felt like he was losing his mind. These humans were treating the most powerful military and political figures in the galaxy like guests at a casual dinner party. They were offering food, entertainment, and medical care to beings who could order the destruction of entire star systems. But perhaps the most unsettling part was how genuine their concern seemed. These weren't calculated diplomatic maneuvers or attempts to gain advantage. The humans appeared to be authentically worried about the well-being of complete strangers and eager to share their culture with anyone who showed interest. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Commander Vexilla, "I think they're trying to be nice to us." The Admiral stared at the human ships, still trying to process this revelation. "That," he said quietly, "might be the most terrifying thing I've ever heard." The Imperial High Council had hastily arranged what they called formal diplomatic negotiations in their grandest conference hall. The chamber was designed to overwhelm visitors with its massive scale and intimidating architecture. Towering pillars stretched toward a ceiling lost in shadows, while holographic displays showed the vast extent of Imperial territory across the galaxy. Captain Minho walked into the hall, carrying a simple briefcase and wearing the same friendly smile he'd maintained since arriving. He looked around appreciatively at the impressive decor, then pulled out a tablet and a thermos of coffee. "Nice place you've got here," he said to High Chancellor Morthak. "Very spacious. The acoustic design is interesting too. Bet it's great for conferences." Emperor Caltheron himself had decided to attend these talks, something that hadn't happened in over 2 centuries. When he entered the chamber, his massive form casting shadows across the floor, most species would have prostrated themselves in terror. Captain Minho simply stood up politely and offered a slight bow. "Your Majesty, I presume." Captain Minho, representing the Earth Trade Consortium, "Thanks for taking time out of what must be a very busy schedule to meet with us." The Emperor settled into his throne, still trying to understand how to interact with beings who treated galactic authority figures like business associates. "Tell me about your people," he commanded in his most imperial voice. "Oh, we're pretty straightforward folks," Captain Minho replied, consulting his tablet. "This particular expedition represents about 40% of our current trade operations in this sector. We've got 12 other fleets operating in what we call the local neighborhood, handling everything from luxury goods to cultural exchange programs." General Kexvar leaned forward. 12 other fleets, each as large as the one that arrived here." Captain Minho nodded casually. "Some are bigger, actually. The entertainment division's fleet has over 600 ships. They're handling the rollout of Korean pop music to about 15 different star clusters simultaneously. Really exciting project." The Imperial officials exchanged glances. 15 star clusters represented territory that would take their fastest ships months to traverse. "And Earth?" the Emperor asked carefully. "Tell me about your homeworld."